I'm Ronald Vording from motorsport.com and welcome to a new episode of First Laps, live from the Albert Park paddock here in Melbourne, Australia. Of course, the setting for the season opener of the new Formula 1 season, but not only the new season, because also a complete new era, new technical regulations. To be honest, in this paddock, still a lot of question marks about these regulations and how the racing will be, especially with the energy management that some drivers already complained about. But having said that, still the excitement levels and the anticipation is incredibly high. They're expecting record-breaking crowds this weekend in Melbourne. Of course, many of them come to support the home hero, Oscar Piastri. But apart from that, you just feel a whole F1 vibe and atmosphere in the city. Basically a bit similar to Montreal, the whole city really embracing Formula 1, which is really cool to see. But of course, we are mainly here to talk about the on-track action. Today started with the first two practice sessions. Oscar Piastri topping the timesheets. Still, we cannot read too much into the lap times because there are a lot of question marks about the engine modes. Also the energy deployment, a lot of variables that the drivers and also the teams and the power unit manufacturers can play with. But we have seen a couple of early patterns. One of those was described by Charles Leclerc, and he said in the media pen after FP2, slowly the sandbags are getting off the Mercedes-powered cars. That's kind of the feeling that many people in this paddock have, that Mercedes is showing a little bit more off their true pace. They haven't really done that in Barcelona. They haven't really done that in Bahrain. So we're getting to see glimpses of it this weekend. Even though FP1 was not completely smooth for the factory team, so for the Mercedes team led by Toto Wolff. Wolff was in the press conference during lunchtime and he said, we had some unexpected issues, but none of those issues are like massive. We can still overcome those issues, and that was already visible in FP2, which went a lot more smooth for the team. Well, McLaren with Oscar Piastri topping the timesheets, but McLaren keeps insisting we are definitely not the benchmark. They keep looking at Mercedes and Ferrari, but still Mercedes favorite for most people, and that's confirmed by today's long runs. Single lap times don't say that much, but the long runs are a bit more interesting. In terms of those long runs, Mercedes was the only team to do a proper long run. We had a media session with Pirelli, and Pirelli said, we saw some less long runs than normal on a Friday, which can be explained by new cars, a lot of setup work to do. But they say one team did a proper long run, and that was Mercedes. So we can look at the graphic, and then it's no surprise that Mercedes was actually quickest, and also by some margin. So both Mercedes drivers, top of the field in the long runs. Ferrari with some distance in between them, the second force. In front of Red Bull. Red Bull, still a lot of people look at Red Bull and say, well, what they do in terms of energy deployment looks quite impressive. But Max Verstappen already said, before really traveling to Melbourne, he already said, well, we still have some work to do to really fight for pole positions and fight for the win. And today, after FP2, he said, this has basically been the confirmation of that. It's not a shock because Max said, I fully expected this with our own engine, completely new project. So it's basically just a confirmation of what he expected, but Red Bull, in his view, still has a little bit of work to do. That was echoed by his teammate Isaac Hadjar, and that's an interesting note because Hadjar on Thursday, the media day here, he said, well, we are not special, that was his quote, we are not special over one lap, but we have a pretty good race car. Today, his analysis changed a little bit because he said in FP2, I tried to do a longer run, and it was really inconsistent with the energy deployment. And energy deployment and how consistent you can do that over multiple laps, that's crucial nowadays to get decent long run pace. So also according to Hadjar, some more work to do than maybe that he anticipated on Thursday. Well, Red Bull is still in the mix. The top four teams are all in the mix. One team that's not in the mix, and that's by far the biggest talking point in the paddock, is Aston Martin. Adrian Newey and Honda's Koji Watanabe did a special press conference on Thursday. In that, Newey said, well, we can basically only do 25 laps. Otherwise, we risk severe and structural nerve damage with the driver. So 25 laps was the limit that he mentioned for Fernando Alonso and 15 laps for Lance Stroll. Today, Adrian Newey was in the FIA press conference and he shared some more details. And he said, well, we are mainly limited, if you talk about the parts, the specific parts of the power unit, we are really limited on the batteries. They only have 2 batteries left, and both of them are in the cars, like in both cars. But that's all they've got. They've got no spare batteries. Doesn't mean they were limited on batteries before the season. It does mean that all of them got destroyed, or many of them got destroyed in Bahrain, and that's linked to the vibration issues they have. They suffer from severe vibrations with the Honda engine. That has an effect on the battery. That causes reliability issues, and that's why the team and Honda as a PU manufacturer only has 2 batteries left. That's why they are heavily limited on mileage, because whenever something happens to one of those batteries, it basically means the race weekend will be over for that car. So that's why we saw very, very, very limited running of both Aston Martin drivers, especially in FP1. Well, the vibrations and reliability issues still the main concern, but there's more, because next to that they are still suffering from lack of internal combustion engine power. If you look at it from the outside, you might think, well, they're mainly suffering from the electrical part of the engines. But Newey explained it's more complicated than that, and it's all related to the ICE, because he said if you're down on combustion engine power, you have to compensate by deploying more in some part of the racetrack that other teams are not deploying energy. And as a result of that, you basically run out of energy on the straights where you need it the most. So then it looks like they are suffering from the electrical side of things, but actually it can be traced back to the internal combustion engine. So that's why Honda has a lot of work to do to just find pure power. There is a safety net in the regulations for that, the duo system, but this will take a long, long time. And there's a second knock-on effect that Aston Martin is not really able to learn a lot about the car. Because Adrian said, yeah, we are basically not running, so we're not gathering the data that I need for car development. And if they are running, Honda kind of encourages the Aston Martin to run with more fuel on board, because fuel can mask some of the battery issues they have. But a high fuel load is not good to find the limit of your car. So once again, Adrian says it's really, really complicated also to find a clear path for car development. So it's not just the engine, but it goes far beyond that. Well, we will talk about this many more times in the upcoming months. First priority for Aston is even to get to the start, so to qualify for the race. They need to be within 107% of the pole lap. That seems to be a massive challenge. Even if they don't make it, the FIA can still grant them permission to start on Sunday, because they want the full grid. They want 22 cars on there. But that's number 1 priority. So let's see tomorrow how qualifying goes, and if Aston Martin actually reaches the 107% rule and therefore makes it onto Sunday's race. After qualifying, we'll be back with a new episode of First Lap. So thanks a lot for watching, and see you again tomorrow.